Hello, my name is Alex, and as you may have noticed, this video is a little bit different than normal. That's because this channel recently reached 1,000 subscribers, and I wanted to do something a little bit special to say thanks. So it's something I get asked about a lot over on my Tumblr, and something I've never been quite good at explaining in words over there, so I figured it'd be nice to try and talk you guys through some of the process that goes into my drawings. For this video I wanted to do a bit of a throwback to my earlier works that got me into online drawing in the first place, so I'm going to be drawing something from Rooster Teeth's anime RWBY. Hopefully some of you guys probably know it. But yeah, let's get right to it. So I try to start out any piece by roughly blocking in where I want the figures to go in it. You can see here I'm using more of a sort of paint splodge kind of method for that, because when I do just sort of straight up sketching for the rough guide, they end up just turning into my final line work. I just clean up my sketches and use them for the final line work. So if I want to do a bit of a neater piece like I want to do with this one, it's better for me personally to do this sort of blocky paint to start off. Plus then I can get a bit of an idea for the tonal values and see if everything sort of works compositionally, see if all of the lines sort of fit together before I do the, I say clean version, the clean by my standards sort of version. For this one I wanted it to be quite dynamic. I was originally going to have the entirety of Team RWBY in the picture, but just for the composition I realised it was a bit too cluttered, so I broke it down to just being RWBY. And I think it works a lot better for it. I think it's a bit more centered, a bit more focused, so that's quite nice. So for my line work, I try not to use the pen tool in just solid black. Like, I know that works for a lot of artists, but I found with my style in particular, I prefer to use the marker tool. Sometimes I will just use solid black for it, but mostly I'll just use like a dark tone of a colour and set my line work layer to the shade blend mode. I feel like that sort of integrates the line work into the picture a lot more, so again, personally for me, this isn't a recommendation for everybody, but you know, it's worth trying out, and I found it definitely works for my kind of style. So for the colours, I don't do anything special for it, to be honest. I just use a simple circle brush with no texture on it, but I set my blending quite high, and then because I work pretty much mostly in flat colours a lot of the time, it does give the illusion of it being more of a painty sort of style of working, when in reality I'm terrible at digital painting if it involves actual sort of colour blending and everything. Just like smudging things on the edges the way I do works for me, so I think I'll keep it at that. But it does give it a nice look by the end of it, so it's something I do try and stick with. But it also works with the line work method I was talking about, so I've got sketchy line work, so if I've got sort of a sketchy blending mode of the colours underneath, then it all sort of fits together pretty well, and you know, if you're experimenting with a style kind of like this, I would recommend trying it out. For the shading, again, I tend to work in flat colours, so I don't do shading a lot, but when I do, I try and keep them all to one layer, so I can do, sometimes it'll be cell shading, where it's sort of really clean lines for the shading, sometimes it'll be blurred, blended in. For this one it was a bit of a mix of both. But I'd definitely recommend, because as you can see this piece is really red, using a colour opposite to the main colour of your piece, and then it gives it a bit more of a natural look. I think I learnt that in art class, can't remember, but so this one's really red, so I went for a sort of bluey green kind of shading, and then it again gave it that more natural look. For the petals and the debris and stuff, I used a bit of a change of pace actually. I used a rough flat brush with a pretty high minimum size. I find that works pretty well for just doing scattered sort of bits and bobs in a piece. I'd recommend, especially with a more dynamic piece like this, putting in a little bit of motion blur on the edges. It just gives it a bit more movement, a bit more of a sort of focus on the centre that isn't blurred, and it works quite well for that. Also, doing some final colour adjusts can really help your colours sort of unify in your picture and bring it all together, so even if you think you're all done, maybe just experiment with a couple more different colours and you should be alright. But yeah, I think that's quite enough of me rambling. Hopefully this has been at least a little bit helpful to somebody out there. In the meantime though, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will hopefully see you for the next milestone. Peace out.